Good morning, friends. Today we are here again to share experience so that to keep on increasing our knowledge. Friends, as a human being and as a living creature, we all are gifted with one of the greatest opportunity to observe the universe. Since from the very birth till the end of the life, we keep on observing. And these observations are very important for our life to grow, develop in a desired manner. When we have adopted the medical professions, our observations need to be directed especially for the medicines and search for the medicines, how the medicines is acting and how we have so it will help in guiding the future and the present also. For the present, we go on observing for the symptoms that is regarding the case taking as a process, and this process includes observations and listening both. So by observations we mean seeing and listening both at the time, and this is important moment for the medical profession to have this type of the understandings. Unless and until we develop this observations habit or cultivate as a part of our professional life, it will become difficult to imbibe the spirit or apply the knowledge that we have learned during our education period. Our academic activity has been tried to fill in us all the opportunity, all the things that is required to practice the art and science of the medicine. The scientific understanding that we gain from our theoretical study get practicalized with the get practicalized with the clinical activity. So medical science has always been regarded as the clinical observatory system of the medicine. And the clinical parts includes the two aspects. One, before you see the patient, during you see the patient, and after you follow up for the case. When the patient is not with you, you are you are not liable for that, or you don't become uh, responsible for it. But when you have taken the case, and during the case taking, your observations that are very has to be acute to arrive at the right medicines. And after you have selected properly, you have hard selection process, you followed the repertorial process, and you got everything that you uh, do to find out the totality of the symptoms and the simillimum. Almost all of us are devoting time to collect the symptoms and then select the medicines and select the potency and administer to the patient. And after administrations to the patient, the medicines start working. So as soon as it is put inside into the patient's domain, it starts working. And our observations has to begin right from the moment medicine was administered. And this you do not come in a day, in a 2 day, in a 1 day, or it takes time to make a resolution or change inside the body. For changing the phenomena, for changing, we have to observe what type of change is going on. And it depends on the way we observe for the system of the medicines working in our body. The medicines, when as soon as medicines enters into your body, it interacts with the disease force as well as the vital force. It has to support the vital force and it has to repel the disease force. So two functions it has to do, and how it is behaving, how it is the action speaks about the way the medicine is working. And this is very essential to know whether your medicine is right, it is wrong, or it is not effective enough. So it may be creating harm, it may be proving to be the cure, it may be the palliative or suppressing. What process, what adopt it is following, it is very important to learn. So let us see how we are going to observe the process of the cure, that is being process of the medicines working inside the patient's life, which has to lead toward the objective is to cure. Every medicine's objective has to be cured when it is selected on a proper selection, after a proper selection system. So this observations requires lot of understanding. I would start my presentation with a beautiful line and observations made by Dr. James Tyler Kate. He says, what is more beautiful to look upon than the birds during its hourly changes to the rose as in its bloom. Have you observed this phenomena? The birds blooming and then getting converted into the flower? Or when after the pollution, it don't become flower in a day. It takes time. It takes time. And observing this phenomena, we have to be watchful how it is working, how whether it is going to bloom up or whether it is going to dry. This is important things that we have to understand. Friend, it is an evolution process that comes to the mind that when patients awaiting the return of the symptom after the first prescription has exhausted its curative power. Evolution process goes on. That means the changing process starts and we have to wait patiently to receive the return of the symptoms after the first prescription has exhausted the curative power. Medicines, how long the medicine is working, how when it has stopped, and whether it requires any further actions or second scope for the second prescriptions are there. It is important things that we have to think about. Friends, this James Tyler Kent was very much keen in having a very descriptive understanding about the way we have to observe for the selection of for the process of the medicine which has worked or which is will be working in our lives. So return of the symptoms unfolds the knowledge by which we know whether the first prescription was specific or palliative or suppressive. The symptoms, it is changing now. This change has begun now. So how it is changing? The change, the way it changes gives you the imagination or understanding in what way, in which directions it is moving. Suppose you are out in the market and you know the destinations, you will follow that. But when you don't know the destinations, because where we are going, where the medicines will go, we don't know don't know the destinations. So at these moments we have to be very interestingly, we have to patiently, we have to watch where it is moving, in which directions it is moving, to know whether it will be a curative medicines or a palliative medicines or a suppressive medicine or it is simply a very futile medicine. Whether the medicines was very superficial, it has acts superficial or it has act only on the upper plane or it has act at the deeper level of the life. So everything has to be, because what we think about our life is that it exists from the very inner core of the vital principle to the very external part of the physical body. So between the spiritual parts of the vital force and the mental aspects and the vital principle, there is a great journey and big journey which needs to be followed up, which needs to be understood properly and observed so that we can get a better picture of the changes that is going on. And then failure or success. You usually think about the success. After the medicines will work. Who will say that it has acted in the right direction or wrong direction. Even the patients come and say that, doctor, I am not feeling very well. I'm not having any change. So does it a sign that the medicine is not working, or we have to wait for a longer time, or the question is frequently asked but seldomly answered? Is the remedy still acting? Suppose a medicine says it started working, and then after some time you have to feel that whether the medicine is in action or its action has committed. And then what will be the vital reactions? Still affected by the impulse of the remedy. The meditation gives the impulse and vital principle receive it, and both together they try to remove the disease from the body. So this different presenting questions comes to our mind. How shall I wait? And how long I should continue? And what frequency of the medicine should be there? Or then whether the medicine has to be repeated, or it is still acting, or what actions I have to take. So these important questions are always very much things for us. Many things learned by the action of the first remedy determines the kind of demand made upon the physicians for the second treatment. What we learn from these observations, the type of the remedy, whether it was a curative medicine, whether it was a palliative medicine, or whether it was a suppressive medicine. So we have to determine the type of the actions that we have to do, or what should be our strategy for the second prescription. For changing the medicines or not changing the medicine, it simply depends on the action that we have learned from the first, after the prescription of the first remedy till the changes had gone. And then what time we have to see, after what time we have to repeat, or we have to make a change in the medicines. These are some of the pertinent questions that usually comes into the mind of the physician. And it only depends how much you are interested in observing, and how much patience you have to see and observe, and how much perseverance you have to wait. So these aspects are very important for our understanding and development of the medical philosophy. Friends, suppress failures or success. Whether the medicines will work or not work, it will depend on our understanding to solve the problem. Different presenting questions are there. If the symptoms are returning, the old symptoms are coming back, how long shall they be watched before it is necessary to act or give the medicine? Sometimes after administering the medicines, we see the fever getting raised, and we become panicked whether it is a good action. And suppose if you don't have the patience to observe further, what you will do? You will simply suppress the symptoms of this aggravation that was very useful for the first observation. Then again, questions will be there whether the actions or disease, nature of the disease is chronic or the acute, and why the second prescription is so much difficult than the first. So what we see that in deciding the first symptom, first prescription was an easy job for us because we started from the scratch. Now we have to go in midway. We start from the between, and from where to start and where to end and when to take up what will be the right moment for the second prescription is one of the difficult and strategical questions that has to be kept in mind. Why it is so many patients are benefited when first going to the physician and thereafter derive no benefit? Many a time the patients come and after the prescription, after receiving the medicines, they come back very happily. Doctor, I am very well, very well. But after some time, he comes back. Doctor, I was well, but not well now. I'm not so good as I said earlier. So what type of the thoughts come to our medicine? what it was just a palliative, or it was psychological in nature, what it was the impressions of the patients about the doctor, the faith of the patients was there. So many questions are there that needs to be answered before we prescribe for the second prescription. And good prescriber, what as a good prescriber, arising thoughts in mind to solve the problem. There are different approaches to proceed. We have often acted too soon, but never waited too long. See, acting out of the haste, out of the anxiety, out of the fear is not allowed for the medical practice. If you don't have the courage enough to face and see the consequence, whether right or wrong, you are not able to see the patients properly. Many physicians fail because of not waiting, and yet the waiting must be governed by the knowledge. Waiting, how long we should wait? It has to be some limitations, some guidance for that. And knowledge must be had, but where can it be obtained? So this knowledge from where you can get? Not from the books, not from the writings, not from your teacher, by your own observations during the because you are seated on the front and you are with the patient, so you will have to decide how long you have to wait, and to know that this waiting is right is quite different from the waiting without a fixed purpose. So when you get the purpose, you can wait, you have the right to wait. But if you don't get the purpose, then it is futile, or it is not useless to wait for such a time. So let us not discuss on the theoretical part. We have to be practical in observations. We have to learn observing it. But we have often too acted too soon, but never waited too long. Many physicians fail because not waiting, yet the waiting must be governed by the knowledge. And waiting is right is quite different from waiting without a fixed purpose. This knowledge cannot be found where its existence is denied. It is not found with unbelievers and agnostics. When the first prescription has been made, we have to wait for the result. So now, when you have fired from the gun, and without looking for the consequence, whether you are going to make another fire, definitely not, because it will be of no use. And after the first things had happened, you have observed what was the consequence, you can save much of the life, much of the time, and much of the energy. So arising thoughts in the mind to solve the problem. So this is knowledge cannot be found by existence is denied. It is not found for unbeliever and antagonistic. When the first prescription has been made and the remedy has been similar enough to change, we have to wait for the results. The manner of change taking place in the totality of symptoms signifies everything. Where the change will take, at the mental plane, physical plane, or the spiritual plane. So, and then this is the place where it starts acting. Then how it is proceeding, what type of the process, it is fast, it is slow, it is in a very haphazard way, paroxysmal way. The manner of change, returns of the image provided, disappear signifies a move. So changing way gives you the directions how the medicine symptoms will disappear. Cure takes place in a process. It has to be a process. Every cure has to be processed. And observing the stage of processing provides clue for next steps of the prescribing. When many type of the changes may take place, symptoms, aggravations, getting aggravated. Whether it is aggravations is on the local plane or in the general plane, whole of the body, whole of the life system, or it is in the local capacity. Then ameliorations in the same way, ameliorations at the local plane or in the general plane, or changes, no changes. You are not seeing changes in the local or you are not seeing in the general. So these are the area, these are the directions, the fundamental directions that gives you the process of observing the stages. So cure is a reversal process to return the image, old image. It is a reversal process. The things were moving in one direction, now it has to come back to the another direction. This is important thing that we have to keep in mind. Now, many changes, things happens during changing process, going on after the medications. What happened? Disappearance of the symptoms, appearance of the old symptoms, and appearance of the new symptoms. And observations is required to understand the nature of the process being followed after medications. Changes take place in every sphere with different intensity and process. Sometimes after the medications, the symptoms disappear. Sometimes some old symptoms appear and sometimes new symptoms. So what to interpret? And whether the appearance of the new symptoms is a good sign or a bad sign, appearance of the old symptoms is a good sign or a bad sign, that we have to find it out. We have to understand. Many times during the case taking, we have not observed about the past history. And when the patients comes after the medications and they say, Dr. Sahab, I had this problem in some years back. The question should still haunt in your mind whether the symptoms, the old symptoms returning back or the new symptoms, it is new symptom. So you have to distinguish between the changes of the disappearance and appearance of the symptom and the appearance of the new phenomena. So old and new, both has to be studied properly. When watching changes is looking for waxing and waning of symptoms in different ways. Have you watched the moon, phases of the moon, rising from the new moon to the full moon, and then again becoming to the old moon? How much time it takes? How much time it takes? 15 days to become the full moon, and then again 15 days to become the moon. Similarly, the medicines when applied, it starts changing to move towards the completeness and full blowing changes, and then it has to decline. So it is waxing and waning of the symptoms, which is continued phenomena during the process of the cure. It needs to be understood properly, observed properly. Friends, what are the observations method now? The important questions in our mind should be how to observe. Observations method and technique in which the behavior of the concerned subject is watched and recorded without any alterations. It is unprejudiced way of looking at the things. Observation doesn't mean just simply by the eye. You have to see by your inner eye. You have to listen with your inner heart, and with these observations makes the completeness. So it is a technique by which the behavior of the concerned subject is watched and recorded without any alterations. It is right from our great philosopher, nothing has so power to broaden the mind as the ability to investigate systematically and truly all that comes under the observations life. Our life is empowered to see. We have born to witness the things. So we become the witness for on behalf of the God what things has happened, and this understanding is very important for all of us. Now, observation skill depends on the patience and free from prior information. You cannot. Dr. Henneman has rightly quoted in F1 unprejudiced observer. What does it mean? Having anything bias in the mind, keeping the bias in the mind. Bias are important aspect for the research, finding out, searching, and this biasness that you may, with the having a prejudiced mind, you may have the malinformations, or no information. Either you can see the things in different way, or you cannot observe. So observations depend on your patience and freedom from the prejudiceness. And types of observation. How many types of the observation? Naturalistic, observing behavior in their natural setting without awareness or any manipulations or interventions. And participants, observing behavior in the natural setting through the active participation in the situation or in manipulations of the environment. And as a practitioner, as a physician, we have to be naturalistic and participate, because patients are complaining every time. They keep on calling, keep on meeting you, keep on telling their problems. And so you have to be very naturalistic, and you have to live with the patient. You have to be the part of their life. So these are very important moments that we can have the type of the observation. Human in general tend to conflate observations with perceptions or interpretations or what we see. Now, after observations, we have perceived or we interpret. We see and then immediately we try to interpret it. But mind it and be careful when you are interpreting for what you have seen, because without thinking, giving thoughts, interpretations is not right. It will be the reflection of your prejudiceness of the mind. Find stages of the observations. It is selections, that selecting a particular aspect of the observation, what you have to observe, the change in the symptoms, change in the medical energy plane. You have to change in the mental plane. You have to change in the. So you have to make a selections. You have to make a division of the entire life system where you have to sit, because you cannot at a time you cannot see everything. So when you start the second follow-up of the case, the important process, you have to make a selections in your mind when to start with the energy. How you are feeling from the earlier stage. What type of the energy? Are you feeling weak or strong? What type of the change? Then you have to, how mentally you feel. Then you come to the symptoms related to. So this selection is very important. And then recording is another aspect. Recording is another aspect, because if you don't keep an account of the things that is observed, it will not become a guide. You will not be able to utilize these observations for the future course of action. So analysis, and third part is analysis, examining the element or structure of the observed aspects in details. So after the selection and recording, you have to make an analysis, and then analysis will give you the opportunity to interpret about the way the medicine is acting or the process of cure is following. So the two fulcra of medicines are reason and observation. Observation is the clue to guide the physicians in his thinking. So observations helps us to guide us in our process of the thinking. And clinical observations, it is used by the skilled clinicians, doctors and therapists in order to glean information about their patient or the clients. These are observations of behavior from the client that are used in order to determine a diagnosis and treatment plan. Typically, notes are taken during the interaction. Typically, notes are taken during the interactions with the client, or in some cases immediately after. Then clinical observations are the basis of therapy and treatment, are the mean at which a professional can learn about their client, the patients. Then art of medicine is in observations. The William Osler, the father of the modern medicines, has remarked the whole art of medicine lies in the observations. But to educate the eye to see, the ear to hear, and the finger to feel takes time and makes a beginning to start a man on the right path is all that you can do. So, how you are observing, you have to educate your eye. What we have to see, what we have to see and what we have to not to see. Then listen what we have to listen, because what you listen only what your mind tells. You see only what your eyes say, and you feel the touch only what your senses and mind say. So everywhere mind is working. So you have to train yourself to make observations and medical observations. For physicians, observations skill are paramount. Observations lead to diagnosis and treatment. As such, physician must distinguish between the differences between the visual observations and the conclusion or inference that are created from that observation. Initial observations should be devoid of judgment. When, as the first impressions, there should be no judgment. You have to wait whether what we have observed is right or wrong. So waiting time is very much required for the interpretations or making a judgment. A very relevant medical example is an expression of pain in an individual face. This may vary from culture to culture and may be context specific. The first observations that you can see the man with the pain. You may think that the pain is very much intense, or it is mild, or it is dull. But how you can make a judgment? Because until you have understood about the individual's life, your culture and culture, which is different from everywhere. Every individual are different from. There are robust persons who can tolerate well. There are very weak constitutions they cannot have. So those type of they do not tells you about the intensity of the pain. So homeopathic as a observer. And for what homeopathy we require, a keen sense of observation is important quality that homeopath must possess. Even in the observations of the coming symptoms, it is must continue to see for the peculiar differences in each individual patient. Peculiar differences. There are so many symptoms. Which symptoms good? Which symptoms is to be guiding symptoms, and which symptoms are to be ignored. So where you have to observe as a homeopath, we see the life as in totality. We see the life as a whole, where lies the spiritual plane, mental plane, and the physical plane. So we have to observe for the mental states, what type of the change is there, and what type of the personality the patient is behaving during the problem. And then for his physical states, and finally the changes phenomenal at the mental, physical, and the spiritual plane. So phenomena are the important aspects that needs to be understood. Homeopaths need to develop observation for deeper layer of the mind. How many layers of the mind are there? The deeper layer of the mind. We have the unconscious mind, we have the subconscious mind, and we have the conscious mind. Patients will always attract your directions, try to attract your directions, observations towards the conscious mind. And with this, you may not be able to observe the subconscious or unconscious mind, but you have whether the changes is at is on the surface, or it is within the things within, or it is in between. This process you can understand only you have understanding and observations of the deeper layer, that means the subconscious plane of the life and the unconscious plane of the mind. So understanding the actual vibrations and alarm signals of the deranged man, inner man, that is the vital force. As a homeopath, we are concerned and very much specific about treating the man with his vital principle, the guidance, the soul. For man, we understand that it is the vital principle, and vital principle, our main target to be cured. We have to purify the vital principle. We have to correct the vital principle, and this is the main target for every homeopath. Observations for aggravations. Now, when you are observing the aggravations, what you have to see, how, when it initiated, when it started, then what are the intensity and how long it is there and when it is declining. So, initiation, beginning point, or starting point, then intensity, low, high, then types, and then durations, and then declining. So these are the stages needs to be observed from one end to the end, and this takes a time. This takes a time. If at one instance the patient will say different things, and other instance the patient will say different, because it is in the process. It is in the process. The man who is there at one place today will be at a different place tomorrow. So between these two places, what type of the changes have taken place to correlate them to justify about the initial intensity, durations, and the decline. And aggravations. If aggravation of the symptoms is attended with a decline of the patient, the cure is doubtful. Now, patient is aggravated and the patient is feeling bad, energy level is way down. The case must be handled with extreme care, as it is seldom that such patients recover perfectly. Aggravations and patient's energy is going down. He is becoming more worse. So this is not justified for patient. Following the symptoms followed, and second, if ameliorations of symptoms followed, if aggravations of the symptoms is attended with decline of the patient, the case must be handled with extreme care, as it seldom that such a patient recover perfectly. And if ameliorations follows the prescription, to what does the ameliorations apply? Now you have given medicines and the patient start feeling better. It may apply to the general state, but the few symptoms only. If the patient does not feel the elasticity of life returning, the improved symptoms, the fact on which there is doubt for the recovery. That the disease is incurable often is obtained only in this way. In such cases, every remedy may palliate his suffering, but cure does not come. So ameliorations followed, and without aggravation, it is like that. The expressions of the debility are that the totality of the symptoms is not removed. Debility means when the debility, that means it's somewhere it is lacking. It has not touched the whole of the patient. So right medicine has to touch the whole of the patient, so that he is energetic after having too much of the problem. If the patient feels better, if the patient feels energetic, that means that it has touched the totality. But if he is feeling better at one place, but energy level is not good, so he is not feeling. I'm less, but I'm not feeling well. I'm feeling my problems are very less, but I'm not feeling well. What is this? That the decline in the energy plays there. The symptoms will affect one by one. The curative impulse has entirely decided to arrange the image of the disease for the purpose of the cure. Symptoms coming gradually one by one, the is like that. It is taken a longer route, and after the first prescription has been continuously given, there is a little chance of a pure returning image of the disease. The image must be very unrelaxed. Now, after the first prescription, you have continuously giving the medicines. Then what is happening? The return image of the disease will not be understood properly, and they become unreliable. And when the remedy has fully exhausted, then only, and then we can trust the symptoms constituting the system. So when the medicine is working, at that moment it is not useful to decide whether things have going in the right direction or in the then in the first prescription minimum, the symptoms will return, and when they return asking for the remedy. Medicine selected on superficial image of symptoms, the totality of the age comes back in altered form. Medicines which do not represent the true totality, the case gets spoiled. Whenever the symptoms return with same image, calling for the same remedy, brings indications for evaluation of dynamic changes of the patient by changing the potency. These are the things that gives you the guidance for changing the potency or whether medicine is going back. Then antisodic remedy selected on truly true totality, we get clarity of the image. So antisodic means what? Dr. Henneman needs to see the antisodic medicines which covers from the inner side or outer plate of the body. Those medicines are Dr. Henneman called, where the medicines we have the information about the vital principles, mental principle and the physical principles, and totality drawn on these principles will give you the clarity of the image. As a physician, we must assessment for clarity and dynamic relations for image changes of symptoms throughout the day is necessary for follow-up. The symptoms may phosphorus as strongly as when we have begun, and phosphorus 6 has served and no longer used. So we have selected the medicines, proper medicines, and after giving the proper the medicine, there is no changes. So whether it is going to change or not change. In the case where the low potency has been administered frequently perfect action, we can move towards the higher potency. But it has not been repeated after its action. The first of the new higher potency after the same potency fails back, a higher one will generally do quite promptly as did the lower one first. When the picture comes back unaltered except by the absence of some of one or more symptoms, the remedy should never be changed until the still higher potency has been selected. From proper time to change. Now, this is another big question that we have. Another, when to change? When the demonstration is clear that the present remedy has done all its capability, what it can do. So it has exhausted, and this demonstration can be made until much higher potency than usually made have been tried. Then the time is present for the next prescription. Suppose you have given 30 potency and then you go to the 200 potency, and after that the medicine is not working. So now you have to think for the second prescription. To change to the next remedy becomes a ponderous problem, and what shall it be? The last appearing symptom shall be the guide for the next remedy. It is a relay race. That the medicine has worked this stage. Now the current picture is like this, which is where some symptoms disappeared, some remain symptoms, and constitutional phenomena is there. Then creating a new totality is required, and that will become the next description. Presenting image observed for the shaping of the returning symptoms picture. After waiting for longer period, we understand whether the action of the remedy has exhausted and need to change medicines without a new image and old remaining the symptoms. The latest symptoms will appear in the anamnesis as best related to some medicines having its as a characteristic most likely have all the rest of the symptoms. The physician must wait for permanency or firmness in relation to the image before making a prescription. And it is better to wait than to prescribe another medicine till we get the new totality of the image. Don't prescribe medicines in between without having complete totality of the picture. New image medicines are prescribed only on the image, not on the partial image. Then the acute expression of the chronic disease. This is another aspect. The patient is suffering from very chronic disease, and at that time, the acute problem have a different management from the acute disease. So condition will grow worse if treated with the remedy for the acute symptoms. Now, with the acute symptoms arising during the chronicity, if you go for the acute medicines, the symptoms will, the patient will not is going to cure. The medicines which have been working and which has created the acuteness will only remove the acute symptoms of that. So we have to wait. Suppose after giving a medicine and there is a recurrent attack, like the child suffers from the bronchitis during every change of the weather. So the symptoms is that changes of the weather aggravates. It is not the changes because of the acute state. It is the symptoms, general symptoms of the patient that changing with changes of weather aggravates. So we have to see it as an acute aspect as the chronicity or as the general symptoms of the patient. The mind that predisposes the case to recurrent attack must be considered. Then another good Cito tuto et judency, quickly, safely, and pleasantly. This was the greatest message that we had from our great philosophers. Waiting by giving only placebo, we can observe the true image after several examinations taken as a whole. After you have given one medicine, keep on giving placebo, so that patient may remain consoled, and after several observations, you can arrive at the right moment of the for the change. When acute stage is mixed with the mild, a single paroxysm does not fully expresses the totality. If the patient is suffering from some disease and he is having the diarrhea, which is alternating with the constipation. So diarrhea requires another medicine, or constipations require another medicine. No, it is the general phenomena of alternating stage of the disease, the recurring stage of the disease, the relapsing nature of the disease. These aspects are the general phenomena. So instead of looking for the acute stage or the in a different form, they are the expression of the same symptoms, same changes. So several must be grouped to get the true image. So we have to group all the situations together to see the true image of the disease. And if the acute disease be complicated with a mild, the indicated remedy will remove it. So this diarrhea and constipations will be removed. If it is selected on the basis of the wholeness of the disease, so this both the conditions of the diarrhea and constipations will get back. Avoid haste. Friends, it is necessary not to be hasty for the physicians with lot of the hastiness and hurriedness cannot be regarded as a physician. A physician means the man with the patience. Man with the patience, to wait patiently, and patience is the prayer for that man. Patience is the prayer for the man, and it is one of the greatest opportunity for the life to see the things and observe the things. All things opposite haste in prescribing. In the very grave disease, haste is the common error, more frequently with the second prescription than the first prescription. First prescriptions also, because when we see and during the second prescriptions also, when we see the patient, the 3 steps has to be followed. We have to see the form, that is the initial image coming to your mind. Then you have to see the functions, what type of function it is doing it. And then we have to go for the structural. So form, function and structure will constitute the image, true image for any symptom. And that should be the basis for the first prescription or the second prescription. And it is very much required for the second prescription. Acute stage do not demand new medicines in the chronic disease. And we should wait. Instead of something must be done. Something for the sake of doing something. Patient is asking medicines, I should abide by his wishes. No. The patient should not guide you to give the medicine and direct you to give the medicine. He should only give the object. You should base all your action on your actions. So many a life can be saved by waiting and waiting. Many a life, you can change the life of the people by waiting. And the first prescription is made with the entire image of the sickness form and watching the improvement of the patient with corresponding disappearance of the symptom is required, and next prescription can be thought only after the new emergence of the changed image. Hastiness is from the lack of the knowledge. Who makes haste? Those who don't know about the backgrounds, who don't know have the depth of understanding. Doctor who cannot wait until usually spoil the case. So waiting is important, and physicians must learn meditating with the patient. Meditating with the patient is very much important. And if you have to be with the patient, live with the patient, you have to be there. You can make the understanding of the sickness as a whole. And close investigations generally reveals that the patient improved after the first dose of the medicine, that the symptoms changed slightly without new symptoms, and the new photo seemed to call for some other medicines which invites new problems. So you should think that it is now the new changes must change, then you are going to invite some new problems. And constant changing of remedy is always destroy the image of the medicine. Medicine is one, and if you keep on changing the medicines one after another, what you are doing? You are spoiling and destroying the image of the patient. And wait and observe. It is only when the first prescription may not have been well selected. It is our human error, human nature that to make the mistake. And it is not bad. We make because we have the limitation. But after we have understood, we need to make the necessary second efforts. So we have to realize our mistake in making the proper selection of the medicines at the first time. Then only the prescribing is possible. So commonly, the new study of the case will reveal the reason why the first prescription has not used. So after the studying again, you can feel that why the changes have not worked. If it still appears to be most similar remedy, the question arises: how long shall I wait? At this point, it should be duly appreciated that the length of time is not so much important as being of the safe side, and wait is the only safe thing to do. It may have been many days, but that matters not. Wait a longer. You have to wait. I have experience after prescribing one medicine after the first time, we waited, and we waited for the years together with the same medicine without making any change. And the patient gradually improved and returned back to the normal. So time is not a matter. How long is not the matter. It is matter how long the change is going on. How long the changes is going on. Because appearance and the disappearance of the symptoms are very much different for each patient. The chronicity comes with the gradual accumulations of dust accumulated into the patient's life. This is important things that we have to understand. Friends, the curative actions may begin as late as long-acting drugs can produce symptoms on a healthy being. Have you read the proving symptoms of medicines? In some medicines, the symptoms started to be appearing during the serving or sometimes, not in the beginning. And in some patients, the symptoms started proving right from the day medicines are observed. So the medicine, this is the process the medicines has acted. So in the similar way that medicines will return back. So every medicines have their way of action. The type of the action, intensity of the action, every medicine has got the difference. So medicines is not only symptoms. Medicine has got the intensity, it has got the way of action in the process of the action that the entire property of the medicines has to be kept into the mind that we have prescribed. Friends, the question becomes considered giving a dose of medicines in water and the divided dose. This is another important question that comes to our mind. Single dry dose, or it is open for discussions requiring the testimony of the many, not a few, to give weight. The best reports are made from both methods and both are in harmony with correct practice. There are the instances when the patients, they give the medicines in fractional dose. One drop diluted in the water, and given one spoonful hourly. This is the dose, fractional dose. And it is useful or not, we have to see with the individual case. So improper actions. The next important step is to be considered when the first prescription has acted improperly or relatively. Then it becomes necessary to consider for the second prescription. So improper actions means the action of the medicines was not good, then it becomes necessary to consider for the second prescription. The first prescription sometimes changes the symptoms that are harmless and painless into symptoms that are dangerous and painful. If a rheumatism of the knee goes to the heart under a remedy prescribed for one symptom, what the medicine has done? It has done harm to the patient. We are trying to cure the knee and it has created the heart problem. So this is not, these are called the impacts. It is hazardous to follow the rapid, all the changes, symptoms in any sickness with remedy that simply from the moment seem similar to the symptoms present. The observing physicians will know by the symptoms and their directions whether the patient is doing better or the worse. Whether what time it will require to reach to the destination. If you are walking in a group, some people walk fast, some people walk slowly. So the time taken in the individual patients are different, and time taken for medicines are different. So medicine and patients both have to work together so that they. So this is the resolved walking system. Patients that the complaints of patients or friends constitute no ground for a prescription. So only have a sympathetic about the pain, about the some acuteness, it is not a ground for making a prescription. Prescription has to be made on the totality of the symptom, on completeness of the symptom. It is not the problem which is from the surfacing part, what are underlying factors are there, they have to combine together to make it proper prescription. The object of first prescription is to arrange the vital or motions in a direction favorable to equilibrium, and this is attended, it must not be disturbed by a new interference. Ignorance in this area has cost millions of lives. And when in the medical world is willing to learn these principles so well that they can cure speedily, gently, and permanently. There can be next time for making the second prescription. It may be a month, many months. The second prescription must be one that a friendly relation with the last one or the prescribing. No intelligent prescription can be made without the last remedy. The concordance in medicines must not be ignored. The new remedy should sustain a complementary to the former one. These are the guidelines. And if in managing a chronic sickness, the remedy that conforms to an acute experience of the illness is worth knowing, as very often its chronic may be just the one that conforms to its symptoms. Calcarea in the natural chronic of belladonna and rustox Netramuroticum sustain the same relationship to Apis mellifica and the ignatia, and Silesia to the pulsatilla. So these are the complementary phenomena that how the medicines, which medicines is going to act. These are the experiences of our masters, but we have to learn our own things, whether we have to prescribe them after prescribing the calcarea guard, whether the patient is requiring the belladonna, or after prescribing the rustox, the patient is requiring the ignatia or the Apis mellifica. It may not be the same. It may not be the same. It are only the guidelines that we have understood. And pulsatilla has been a great service to in a given the finally course of no more, but no cure, while the symptoms now point to the Silesia, and the latter will be given with confidence as its complementary relationship. So complementary relationship is decided in the individual feature, not in the general features. We have to the complementary relationship. The patient will tell you which medicines is going to be the complementary medicines for him. And there are the observations that causticum and phosphorus do not have incompatible or injurious. These are one observation, but it is not that after causticum, if the image of phosphorus is coming, you will not be prescribing phosphorus. Yes, I will prescribe phosphorus if the new image is the phosphorus can become the complementary of the causticum. Hence, physicians can make the second prescription only after confirmed observation, and statistical approach are necessary. And careful records is very important. Confidence in the experience comes with the written statement by recording all symptoms. Because the process of cure will take months together, years together. What has happened in the first month and what will happen in the second month, that will be that may not be in your memory. It has to come from the record, because you cannot depend on the memory with so many seeing so many patients. Especially it is necessary in patients to need a second prescription. The physicians who have in each case book the notes of every illness of each patient has wonderfully hold of the community also. So you can see the patient. Some patients you have seen earlier, sometimes back, and after some years again he is coming back. Because you have the case history of it, you can understand why this second problem has arisen, or you can get a better understanding about the present medicines. So, and he can also make a good hold over the community medicine. He has the old symptoms and the remedies noted that cure. So he can make indirect inquiry after the old symptoms long ago removed. The pleasure is not small found in consulting such a case book. Experience should leads to close prescriber to note all peculiar symptoms and to omit the nondescript wandering indulged by the second sick people. Many physicians make a correct first prescription and the patient does well and cheers up for a while, but finally the test is made and the second and for the second and then all is lost. Homeopathy is nothing if not true, and if true, the greatest accuracy of detail and method should be followed. It is fortunate that the physicians who repeat while the remedy is acting are such poor prescriber or their death list would be enormous. All natural forces are based upon law. These laws do not operate in a limited field but are universal. To illustrate, the law of gravitation is not limited in its scope to the earth, but its influence extended throughout the universe. Hahnemann, by his fine observations and inductive method of reasoning, became convinced of the law of pure similia similibus curantur and embraced it and declared it to be the universal as basic therapeutic laws. General law for cure must expresses the some relationship between the medicine and disease. For any practical use, such a relationship must be exhibited, and we must be able to demonstrate such relationship between the disease and the remedy that the examination of the former shall determine the latter. Nothing can be known of the disease save through the phenomena knowledge as symptoms. These are evident to our observations and sense and must be recognized. The power to produce these phenomena is what we call the property of the medicines. Science of therapeutics or a mode of treatment should indicate a relationship between the drug administered and the disease in question. The relationship is ideal in the sense that it affects true cure. It was this search for the ultimate truth that landed in the discovery of homeopathy as an effective system of the medicines. The choice Hahnemann made and led him down a completely different track from the conventional methods. Hahnemann condemned as a clumsy doctrine bringing only more suffering upon humanity as a elusive internal causes of sickness linger on untouched by these superficial allopathic treatment and continue to act as a fertile spring throwing to the surface new disease throughout the patient's life. So, while homeopathy itself is a perfect science, truth is the only partially known. The truth itself relates to the divine, the knowledge relates to the man. So this understanding we have to keep in the mind to when you are practicing homeopathy. Friends, Dr. Kent has made many observations and he has made a philosophical quotations for you. You cannot divorce medicines and theology. Medicines and philosophy, they have to exist together because man exists all the way down from the inner spiritual to his outer nature. A man who cannot believe in God cannot become a homeopath. The body becomes corrupt because the man interior will become corrupt. When you see the failure, you may be sure that they are within yourself. Failure is not in the patients, failure is in the physicians. If you don't see the failure, it is a homeopathy. You will begin your correction and on the wrong side of the leader. So friends, with this I came to an end, but only thing is that observing and we have to practice, we have to keep on meditating on the observation. So with this I thank you all, and if you have any questions you can write me. Please write me on my email ID risritiat@gmail.com, or you can put your questions on my WhatsApp also 9431020 622. Thank you very much. So we have come to the end of this session, and it is, I see some of the comments, but it is only appreciation. I need many more comments so that whether you have understood or not. If you don't have understood, it is my weakness, and I'm not maybe not able to explain it properly. But you have the right to ask me at which point you have not understood and which point you need more consideration. So thank you very much for your patiently listening to me, and I hope we can keep on learning this way in all the times to come. Thank you.